This is Dr. David Allen coming to you on the television program People Helping People. We're talking tonight about the world of the child, the world of the inner child. Someone has said that you can tell the strength of a nation by the way it treats its children. Jesus said, "Suffer the little children to come unto me, because of such is the kingdom of heaven." And so tonight we have with me a newly trained child therapist who's a Bahamian and back from London. And she's going to be talking with us about the world of the child. Her name is Miss Evie Jagger. Evie, so nice to have you here. You know, child therapy, this is a whole new field for us in the Bahamas. What actually is it?
Child therapy is a form of therapy that's been developed in order to meet the needs of children and adolescents, and also the inner child inside of each of us, because we all as adults carry the relics of our childhood and our world as children. So child therapy is really a system and approach that uses the arts. So you can see my little army of friends that helps me in my practice in order to meet the needs and communicate with children on a level in which they can communicate and play art.
So it's really dealing with children, but then every adult really has within them a child, right?
That's right.
Because every step you go up, there's always a step below it. So really every man has a little boy, and every woman has a little girl. So as a child therapist, you work with children, but you also work with the inner child of the adult.
That's right.
Male and female.
Yeah, it's about finding a voice for the child, whether they're actually literally children or children inside of us, our inner child.
And you know, sometimes we can't really get the child to talk to us. How do you, as a child therapist, get the child to express themselves to you?
Well, first of all, it's through my own thinking. I believe that our child's behavior is a way through which they most effectively communicate.
The child's behavior
is
where they communicate.
Exactly. I think that behavior has meaning always. And it's up to us as adults to be curious about what that meaning is. In the therapy room, I pay attention to kind of what child is bringing, how they're acting, what they're doing with their hands, what they're doing with their feet, the feelings that I get from them, but also I kind of try and meet them on their level. So I use play. I might invite them to tell me a story about their life using figurines and the sand tray, and then I might invite them to speak from the different figurines, and that's all a way of integrating different fragments of ourself in a way that's safe, in a sandbox here that I brought in to show you. I also use the arts, so we draw pictures, we play, we do all kinds of different things in order to find the language, meet the child in their own language, which is play.
So the child, Evie, does have an inner world.
Yes.
They know what they're feeling, they know what they're seeing, they know. The question is, us adults, we have to get into their world.
And it's interesting how you say that they know what they're feeling, they know what they're thinking. Actually, children are feeling, are thinking, and it's up to us as adults to help them, to offer them words in order to build a narrative around their feelings so that they can know what they're feeling and know what they're thinking.
Is it possible sometime for us as parents not to know what our children are feeling or thinking?
That's a good question. I think as parents, we probably always would like to hope that we know what our children are thinking and feeling, but there are so many different elements involved. Our children, you know, as parents, you're your child's protector. You're the thing that keeps your child alive. So they, in kind of retrospect, want to protect you. So perhaps if there are feelings, if there's, you know, an example is bereavement, it can be hard for a child to talk to the surviving parent about that because it evokes feelings inside them and they don't want to hurt their parent in that. So it can be difficult.
That's really touching. So you mean the child is so caring of us, the adults or the parent, that the little child wants to protect us?
I think we see that a lot in children. They love their parent. Their parent keeps them alive. They need their parent. They need their parent to be healthy. And in order to do that, sometimes children can keep what they're feeling inside, try and protect their parents from their own feelings.
That's so touching. You know, I've always thought, you know, in our country we've had a number of violent crimes and murder and what have you. And you hear the police and the ambulance going out. But I wonder what happens to those children at those murder sites. Are they traumatized? What happens to them?
I think there is so much trauma, Dr. Allen, that children experience, that they hold inside of them.
They what?
That they hold inside of them.
Oh, they don't say a word.
Sometimes they might not say a word. Sometimes instead they might act out. They might withdraw. They might, there are other symptoms of trauma. They might, their school might drop, because we know what happens when children are highly aroused through feelings, that their parts of their brain that help them learn shut down. Parts of their brains that help them control their impulses shut down. So when you have children that are acting out, or that are withdrawing, or suddenly having difficulties in learning, or hypervigilant, you know, the child, if a door slams, the child in the room shakes, those are kind of ways of starting to be curious about what's going on for that child. What have they been witnessing? What's happening in their world?
What could we do to help that child who's traumatized? Like, for example, as I said, the police go out and the ambulance goes out. But what could we do to prevent or reduce the traumatization of the children at those violent crime sites?
The key to safeguarding children against trauma is emotional attachment. I think there are lots of things we can do post.
The key to safeguarding children from trauma is what?
Emotional attachment, a secure attachment to a caregiver.
And how would that work out, let's say, at a crime scene where somebody's been murdered and their kids around?
So at a crime scene when somebody's been murdered, the feelings that are around, I imagine, are feelings of being unsafe, feelings of being overwhelmed by what you've seen, so that your ability to cope has been withdrawn. Feeling that something unspeakable has happened. So with those feelings of lack of safety, of overwhelmingness, of being overwhelmed, of lack of words to put to an event, what you need is a trusted, safe person or people to go to, through which you can share what you've experienced. There's a saying, sharing is bearing.
Sharing is
bearing.
Bearing.
What's shareable is bearable. So I think in a crisis situation, when there's been a traumatic event, it's really important to offer that sense of safety, someone that's a safe place. Children, you know, don't need to explicitly describe everything that's happened, but a place where they can play it out, a place where someone is interested in their inner world, interested how they're feeling, and that can be with a parent that's trusted, a neighbor, an aunt, a grandmother, grandfather.
And Ms. Jagger, how does an adult become a trusted or safe person for a child?
That's a good question too. I think one of the main things is healthy consistency. So
healthy what?
Consistency. So to consistently be available emotionally, physically, to consistently offer regulation. So if you imagine a baby that's crying, the mother or the father is rocking them, soothing them. If that consistently occurs, the child can integrate that. The baby starts to integrate that into their sense of self. So they soon become able to self-soothe, to regulate, then to be able to offer that to others.
So actually, as you soothe the baby by holding the baby internalizes that self-soothing and learns to do it for himself.
Exactly.
And then that baby can give that self-soothing to others.
Yes.
So it goes from adults to the child's self, and to the child to others.
Yeah. And really what we're looking at there is a secure attachment that's begun. A child that feels safe, that feels held physically first, and then emotionally through the relationship. And through that, a child whose needs are being met. through that internalization process, through that process where they can keep that feeling inside of them, they develop an inner voice, an inner self-soothing voice, a nurturing voice, a voice that keeps them safe against trauma, a voice that when they see, inevitably life is difficult, life can be hard, but when they come up against that difficulty and that pain, they have that voice to fall back on inside.
That inner voice.
And that becomes a societal voice that emanates out through generations into the family, into the greater community.
It's so beautiful to think of a child having an inner voice of comfort, an inner voice of safety. But Ms. Jack, I was thinking about the opposite. Suppose a child doesn't have a mother to rock it, to hold it. Suppose the mother's not there, or suppose the mother is abusive or the father's abusive.
Yeah.
What happens to the child then?
So in that situation, you have a baby that's born or a child that's living in a world that's not safe, in a world that has unclear boundaries, in a world where they don't feel self-worth because the caregivers, for whatever reason, aren't able to protect them, to keep them safe, to meet their basic needs. So a child starts to internalize that. I'm not worth protection. I'm not worth being special. I'm not worth all of these things that we would attribute to any child. And what starts to develop is an insecure attachment style.
Okay, so the child actually has a voice inside of him saying, I'm not safe.
I'm not okay.
I'm not okay.
Yeah.
It's a hard way to start life.
It's a very hard way to start life. And it's a hard way to approach life, to enter into the world, to start exploring the world with that inside of you.
I'm so glad you're back home to our country because we need you.
I'm excited to be back.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to be back. Yeah.
We're going to take a break and be right back.